Hello and welcome to grammar class. Today's lesson is the correct usages of some very common yet interesting phrases. First up, we have the phrase let alone or leave alone. The phrase let alone or leave alone is used to suggest an unlikely situation or thing. Let alone or leave alone means not to speak of or what to talk of a situation or thing that is so unlikely. Generally, the phrases let alone and leave alone are used after a negative statement. Now look at the first example on your screen. She does not even want to see him, let alone date him. Here the expression let alone date him means there is no question of dating him. It's so unlikely. Please remember that we always use the bare infinitive or the first form of a verb after the phrase let alone or leave alone. The next example, they can't afford a two-wheeler, let alone or leave alone a car. This sentence simply means that they can't even buy a two-wheeler. So it is quite unlikely for them to afford a car. We might also use the expression not to speak of in place of let alone or leave alone here. They can't afford a two-wheeler, not to speak of a car. Sometimes we use the phrase let alone at the start of a sentence for emphasis. Let alone a school, the village has no source of drinking water even. This sentence simply means there is no question of a school when the village has no basic amenity like drinking water. He said that he didn't even know the victim, let alone kill her. Here the expression let alone kill her means there is no question of his killing her. The phrase let alone highlights the unlikeliness of his act of killing her. Why? Because he didn't even know the victim in the first place. We also notice here that the phrases let alone and leave alone are used with a negative statement. Well, now let's study the phrase even if. The phrase even if simply means whether or not. The use of the phrase even if indicates that the happening of a certain action or event will make no difference to the outcome. For example, even if it rains hard, I will go there. The sentence means whether it rains hard or not, I will go there. In other words, even if it rains hard, it will make no difference to my action of going there. The phrase even if is always used in the subordinate clause, which may come first or second in the sentence. He will not surrender even if he dies. This sentence means whether he dies or not, he will not surrender. In other words, he will prefer to die, but he will not surrender. He will not surrender for the fear of dying. In the last example, the subjunctive mood has been used in both the clauses. I would not beg even if I were to starve. Here the expression even if I were to starve means the need to starve. The speaker means to say that whether he has to starve or not, he will not beg. Even the situation of starvation would not make any difference to his resolve to not beg. Well, the phrase in spite of indicates a contrast between two factors. It means regardless of. We use in spite of to introduce a fact that we did not expect. For example, in spite of his illness, he went to office. This sentence means as he was ill, we did not expect him to go to office, but he did. So there is a contrast between his illness and his act of going to office. The next example, you have come late again in spite of being warned before. This sentence means you were warned before, so we did not expect you to come late. But you came late again regardless of the previous warning. There is an element of surprise and a clear contrast between these two activities. He did not lose heart in spite of his repeated failures. This sentence means even though he experienced repeated failures, he did not lose heart. The fact that he did not lose heart even after failing so many times is surprising and unexpected. In this way, the phrase in spite of marks a clear contrast between the two factors. In spite of promising to come, he didn't turn up. We understand that since he promised to come, it was surprising and unexpected that he broke his promise and didn't turn up. We also notice here that the phrase in spite of is used either before a noun like illness or failures, or before a gerund like being or promising. Coming up next is the phrase rather than. It means instead of or in place of. The phrase rather than is used to indicate one's preference or choice. Remember, in a sentence, the phrase rather than is used just before the unpreferred or unpreferable action or thing. Another important thing to remember is that we use a bare infinitive or an infinitive without to or a gerund after rather than to refer to an action. Now see some examples of how rather than is used in sentences. Many people prefer to keep quiet rather than speak or speaking the bitter truth. Here rather than simply means instead of or in place of. So the sentence means many people prefer to keep quiet instead of speaking the bitter truth. See the use of the bare infinitive speak or the gerund speaking after rather than. Of the two actions, the preferred one, keeping quiet, comes before rather than, while the unpreferred action, speaking the bitter truth, comes after it. It is better to pay by check rather than in cash. Here two modes of payment, by check and in cash, are compared. The unpreferable mode, in cash, comes after the phrase rather than. It is better to pay by check instead of in cash. The expression would rather than also denotes preference. He would rather die than beg. Here rather is used together with would before the preferred action die, while than is used separately before the unpreferable action beg. The phrase rather than can also be used at the beginning of the sentence. Rather than travel or traveling all night, we should halt at a wayside inn. Here again, the phrase rather than indicates our preference to halt at a wayside inn over the unpreferable action of traveling all night. The last example, let's have some fruit rather than cakes. It means let's have some fruit instead of cakes. Obviously, the phrase rather than expresses our preference for fruit over cakes in this sentence. So finally, we have the phrase as it were. It has two alternatives, so to speak and if you will. The phrase as it were means if I could express or put it that way. We might say as it were is the short form of as if it were really so. We use this phrase to make a statement sound less definite or vague. The phrase as it were is used either before or after the intended expression that we want to present as less definite or vague. The examples on your screen will further clarify the meaning of as it were. The fairy tale transported the kids to a dream world, as it were. The expression dream world does not exist in reality. The speaker puts it that way in the sense of a fantasy world. We might also use the phrase so to speak in place of as it were. My teacher is, as it were, a walking encyclopedia. Here the teacher has been figuratively compared to a walking encyclopedia owing to his vast knowledge. There is nothing like a walking encyclopedia, but the speaker describes his teacher that way. The whole city became, as it were, a ghost town after the pandemic broke out. Here again, the speaker uses the phrase as it were to describe the city as a ghost town. In reality, the city was not exactly a ghost town. So the speaker uses the phrase as it were to make his statement or description less definite or vague. In the last example, the sun is, as it were, the lamp of the universe. The phrase as it were serves the same purpose. It makes the statement less definite or vague, because in reality the sun is not a lamp, but the speaker puts it that way in view of its importance in the universe. That's the end of today's class. Hopefully you liked the video. Please do like, share, comment and subscribe to our channel, and do not forget to click the notification bell for more such grammar content. Thanks for watching.